大家好，大家好，欢迎来收听表友 Podcast. Today we'll be speaking in English. Will be my first BIAOIST English podcast. And for this inaugural English podcast, we are really honored to happy to have Peter Chong from Deployment to join us today. So hi Peter.
Hi, Joe.
So thank you, Peter, for agreeing to join our first English podcast. Um, so to start, I think everybody know the poem. Actually I'm not sure if everybody know the poem, but for me, I knew the poem from long ago. From perhaps I would say like when I really like even beginning my collection journey, my watch collection journey. And then of course I think you to me you are the sort of like a trusted source when it comes to Gunther line because you are one of the
Thank
early
you.
collectors or journalists that actually interviewed him. I don't, for some reason he doesn't do a lot of media, or maybe he wasn't doing too much of media, but it's so interesting that the things, if I want to look after, I mean, I want to research about Gunther Line, I have to, land. I will always land it on your, whether that's like the watch forum or on Deployant or on different like old school internet media, like what's that called? There's a place called Purist, like all those like old school, like pure prior to Facebook internet media watch medians. I
Right.
would find you there. So we would like to. So that's why I'm really happy to have you on my podcast and to actually discuss about you and
Thank you.
your journey to do the deployment and your way. You when you talk to come to Line, what were your ideas? What were you and what position were you in that day in that time? So yeah, we welcome Peter, and Peter, please help our audience to sort of like tell us a little bit about yourself.
As Joe has mentioned, thank you very much. My name is Peter. I've been collecting watches for actually many years, coming to 37, 38 years. I started when I started working, and I've been collecting for a long time. And as a result, I know quite a lot of people within the industry, both collectors and people who are on the other side, the maisons and the watchmakers. In the early days, we used to go on our own to Basel World in those days, and the manufacturers were all kind of like surprised to see that there's a bunch of collectors who were interested enough to pay for our own way to go and see the watches as they are being launched. And this was unusual, like 35 years ago. We were like a handful of non-professional journalists who were wandering around the halls in Basel, trying to get hands-on, trying to speak to the watchmakers, and some of them, out of curiosity, would actually speak to us, and we became friends from that long ago. I also started writing about watches and photographing watches because the other passion I have is in photography. So I also started writing and photographing watches from about then. And at that time, the major uh, online presence was a website called timezone.com. So I started contributing to timezone.com. And in the early days, there were very few of us. And so, in fact, all of us, the 20 or 30 hardcore people in timezone.com in 96, 97, 98, when timezone first started, became good friends. In fact, all of us are still friends, except for a couple who have passed on because it's that long ago. And some of these guys were much older than me at that time. So I was in my late 20s, early 30s in those days. And we started writing, we started talking, we started meeting in Basel World. And Basel became really a meeting point for us once a year because in those days we also traveled much less. And all of us made it a point to meet in Basel a couple of days before. We used to stay in Zurich. We don't even stay in Basel because we couldn't get places to stay in Basel because we don't have any influence in those days. And we would meet at 8 a.m. in the morning at the Zurich train station, main station, under the big clock, and take the train together. The train is 1 hour, where we chat, we discuss, we talk about watches. for the whole week. And these guys came from all over the world. We have people from the US, people from Holland, people from Switzerland. We had a Swiss guy. We had people like me and a couple of other people from Singapore. And kind of that's about it, because we were also kind of focused on the English speaking side. I guess there will be groups of people going up from Hong Kong, from Thailand, but we did not really mix with them in those early days. We grew, of course, to mix with them later on, and we began to know some of these people. But in the early days, in the late 1990s, we did not know them. So my group was primarily Americans, some Europeans, and a couple of Singaporeans.
So I
And
guess
we started writing for Timezone.com. Timezone.com, interestingly, is the first, and as a result, that it became the largest discussion website for watches in the world. It started in Singapore, actually, and then we had some crazy guy who came and crashed the system. The system went down for several months, and then when he came up, a chap in California, one of the early participants as well, a fellow by the name of Richard Page, who actually owns a watch shop called Paris 1925. He bought the site, and the process of transferring the asset from Singapore to the US began. And with him, he recruited another chap, which is quite famous. I don't know whether you've heard of him. An American psychologist and writer, photographer, well, Renaissance man, called Walt Odets. So if you look up Walt Odets, his technical articles are still online in timezone.com. And here was one of the first expositions where an amateur, not in the watch trade, actually open a watch up, take it out in the pieces, show us where the points are where the finishings are done, where finishing is not done, and made a lot of critiques on the watches in the early days. These were very technical critiques. So part of the system, part of the things that he talked about were watches like Rolex, Lange, Blancpain, Patek, and these were his own watches. He owned the watches himself, and he took them apart. Sometimes he couldn't put them back. He had to go down to his local watchmaker to get him to fix. But he was technical enough and focused enough, and he was also quite good in photographing them, that he was able to show for the first time in the internet how a watch looked like inside without being a watchmaker, and how the watches were being finished, what are the pros and cons of each of the finishing methods and techniques, and helped us along in the technical education. And then after that, Timezone, of course, became quite big, and then it was bought by actually a Taiwanese guy who owned Parcel Pro, but he was based in the US, and then he sold it to Andy Corum, and currently I think he's still owned by Andy Corum. He's still brand by Andy Corum. But of course, during the process, the web forums lost its appeal, not before other websites like Purist Pro came up. So Purist Pro became a competitor, but it sprang from timezone.com. And after that, the discussion forum lost its appeal, and the discussions group moved to Instagram, to Facebook, and stuff like that when these social media platforms came on board. So I've been involved since the beginning. I started writing, I started photographing, together with Michael Friedberg. I don't know whether you've heard of him before. We started the world's first brand-only forums. So he ran the IWC forum, and I ran the Lange & Söhne forum. So these were the two brand-specific forums, and the first two in the world, where we 100% focused on only those brands that was in the masthead. So we ran those forums. I also ran for a short time Vacheron Constantin, and I also ran for a short time the forum for independent watchmakers. But this was short because I didn't really have time. I was working full time at that time, and I was traveling quite a lot. So in the end, I just focused on the Lange forum, and that's why I developed this relationship with the brand in the early days. And but even before that, even before Timezone, I started with Timezone to write about the Lange & Söhne. When I first started in Timezone.com, the discussion was primarily Rolex. Mr. Rolex, James Dowling, is there, and he was kind of the guy who was providing a lot of the information. We're still friends, and I asked the questions about Lange. And in the 1997-98 era, people were laughing in the forum that they say that, oh, what do these guys know? These are East Germans. They drive Trabants. How do you expect them to know and understand and appreciate high-end watchmaking? But I continued my search for it. There was no resources available at that time on the internet. But of course, there was a dealer, an authorized dealer here in Singapore. I got in touch with them. I got the catalog. I spoke to the salespeople. I spoke to the MD and understood a little bit about the brand. And I wrote the first website for Lange & Söhne. This was hosted in a very old platform called Fortune City. I guess you guys are all too young to know this. But fortunecity.com was one of the places where you could go and start a website for free and still host there. I believe the website is still running. Fortune City website is still running, where I wrote the first series of articles talking about Lange ever to be published on the internet. And for some reason, Gunther Blumlein found out about it. Of course, I don't think he read the internet in those days. He found out about it. Somebody told him. And then he called up the local dealer distributor in Singapore, which is Sincere Fine Watches at the time. He spoke to Liam Wee, who was the CEO, and said, oh, this Singaporean guy who is writing about us, I would like to meet him. So Liam Wee arranged for a dinner. And when he came to Singapore, I met him at the dinner and he said, we would like to support this, but we don't have the capability to start a website right now. Because remember, this is the early, 1997, 1996, where the internet was still quite new. A lot of the major brands were starting to go into the internet and having web presence, but smaller brands had no capability. It was too difficult for them. It was too difficult. And when I started receiving, for example, press releases, pictures were distributed as either photographs or as 35mm slide film. And I could request for 6:9 slide film as well if I wanted. And those were used to reproduce for magazines and things like that. But those were the days. This was before digital. There was nothing digital at that time. So he assigned one of his assistants to coordinate with me. So this assistant, his name is Dr. Frank Muller. Same kind of name, but not Frank Muller from Fento. Dr. Frank Muller, he's a German guy. And we became very good friends. Today, he's still one of my best friends in the business. And and we are in touch almost on a weekly basis, even today. So he coordinated this interview, which ended up being the first interview ever for Mr. Blumlein on the internet. And we published it in timezone.com. I think in 1997, 98, I don't remember the exact date. That's when I started this collaboration. And with this, he gave the permission to me through Dr. Muller that I could have access to any information I needed and I wanted about the brand, and they would cooperate and give it to me. I respected them in the early days much more, also because although there were things that were not specifically communicated in press releases and things like that, if you actually ask them about it, there was absolutely no lies. They would tell you exactly what is happening. Things like, for example, the base train for the first 3 watches. There were 4 watches launched in 1994. The Tourbillon Polymerit, the Lange 1, the Saxonia, and the Arcade. These 4 watches were launched in the early days. 3 of them, other than the Polymerit Tourbillon, was shared the same wheel train. And this wheel train was actually manufactured by Jaeger-LeCoultre. And that's why you see the balance wheel of the Lange 1, which is much bigger watch than, for example, the Arcade, are exactly the same. In fact, they're the same. And they are made actually by Jaeger-LeCoultre in La Sentier. And they did not communicate this willingly or in the press releases. But when I asked them, they willingly and without hesitation confirmed that is the case. So although they do not communicate everything up front, but when you ask them questions about what it is, they never lie. And that's what I admired about them in the early days. And remember, this was 1996, 97, where almost to a T, every manufacturer you ask, who made your movement, the answer is in-house. When we knew at that time, and it was just the beginning where we were starting to discover that, hey, this in-house thing is not true. Because a lot of these movement manufacturers do not make their movements in-house. They were sourcing from Frederick Piguet, they were sourcing from Jaeger-LeCoultre, who was actually a big movement manufacturer at that time. And a lot of the, for example, Audemars Piguet movements were made by them. But for a good reason, because AP at that time owns 40% of Jaeger-LeCoultre. So 60% was owned by a group called LMH, Le Manufacture Horology, which is a company headed by Mr. Blumlein. And 40% was actually owned by Audemars Piguet. And they have access to a lot of these other manufacturers as well. Frederic Piguet was not independent from Breguet as we have today, or Blancpain. We have Lemania, who was independent, who was supplying movements to even people like Patek Philippe. We had people like Zenith, who were supplying movements to Rolex even. But if you ask many of these manufacturers, especially in those days where before the big review came in, maybe I think early 2000s, that they would say in-house movement. Everything is in-house. Very few manufacturers will say, oh yeah, my movement is sourced from so-and-so, so-and-so. But this came only in the 2000s where the internet boom caused this great discovery. And I would like to credit ourselves as the people who hated this, because we were very curious. We were pushing very hard to the manufacturers to show us where these watches were actually being made. So to come back to the Blumlein story. So with that, we established this relationship, and I continued this relationship very, very strongly with Lange for many, many years. I have a complete access, and that's why when in 2009, I decided that I need to write a book about Lange because this is my great passion. And I took a sabbatical, a 1-year leave from my job at that time to write this book. And I completed the book in 2010. But during the process, the support from Lange was incredible. They did not pay for the book, so I paid for it myself. So it's a personal project. But they basically gave me the keys to Glashütte. So they gave me those things where I could enter every room, including the archives, as and when I wish, in Glashütte, except for one room, which is that one I couldn't enter. But the other rooms I could enter anytime I wanted. I had access to the archives, and so on top of that, because I did not sign an intern for me, who German and English, and she was kind of like during the entire about 1 month and 2 weeks in the second trip. So 2 trips together, 6 weeks in Glashütte, basic research for this piece of work. But of course, in the meantime, even when I was away from Glashütte, she was continuing to work by talking to people, translating articles, translating interviews. It was a very interesting time for me. In 2011, I published a book. They helped me not distribute, but to promote the book in Tokyo, in Beijing, in I think in Austria, in Vienna, these 3 cities, and in Munich. And they bought quite a lot of copies of the book. But other than that, the book is a personal project of mine. Yeah. So the book is a huge book. It's quite big. It's A3 size close, A2 open. And I did all the photography, all the writing. But of course, I engaged in a publishing. I own the publishing house, but I engaged an editor to help me edit the book and also to do the layout. But other than that, the entire book was done on my own.
Wow, that's
and
incredible.
After that, I decided not to go back to my previous job, and I stayed out for a while. Kind of took care of my health because I was really big at that time. I was 110 kilograms.
Oh,
and
wow.
I started cycling seriously in 2010, 2011, and then within 2 years I lost 30 kilograms.
Wow.
It stayed like that since. So those guys who know me before 2010 will know that I'm quite a big guy, and now still quite a big guy, but not so big anymore. So in 2014 we started deploying because as a retirement business, and we did not really. We were there to provide an independent view in the watchmaking industry. And we are one of the few people who still today remain completely uncommercial. That means we do not sell any watches. We do not sell any products relating to watches. We do not, we're not involved in the trade. So we don't do, for example, collaboration watches like many of the other websites do. We are directly, purely an opinion site, news site. So we bring news, we bring opinions, and that's why we say we are independent. There are not many of these independent resources that are available in the watch world today, because many of them, as you know, they have collaborations, they make money from selling watches and things like that. for events and things like that, where we make our revenue, because we are a business. And although it's a retirement business for me, I don't make a lot of money. I can't get rich. I can't feed my family with this. We have expenses. So we need to keep the lights on. And the revenue comes from either advertising, or we did quite a lot, for example, the last 2 years with the help of Stanley, whom you know, in events. And we charge for the work done and access to our guest list for the events, but not a share of the products that are sold during the events. And I made this point from the early days because I don't want to be involved in selling the product. So my role is to introduce the brand to collectors who might think I pre-selected, who might think may be interested in the brand, and also introduce to the collectors some aspects of the brand which I think they may be interested in. But that's where it goes. That's where it stops. Yeah. And of course, as I've said many times in our own videos as well, we're not unbiased. Everybody is biased, but we try and publish those biases as well. So if you look at our website, every year, 2 or 3 times a year, we have articles from all my writers talking about their own selections. The idea is that to give you as a reader a glimpse of what their biases are. For example, after Watches and Wonders, each writer would pick 3 watches which impress them the most. And this gives you an idea of what triggers them, what is their biases, and how they view certain aspects of watchmaking. The same way as every year, end of the year, we do a Dear Centerpiece, which is kind of a cute kid plays piece.
I think only you guys do it. Nobody.
I think we are the only ones to do it, yeah. And the idea is that it's not, of course, partly for the fun of it, but the idea is also to let you have an idea of a glimpse, a look at the biases of all these writers. What are the watches which are occupying their thoughts throughout the whole year? And that's the idea, so that we kind of lay open our biases, so that when we say the movement is well finished from a certain writer is different from well finished by a different writer. It's different from a well finished from another different writer because of the focus of the particular writer. Because some writers are focused, some people are focused, collectors as well, are focused on history. Some collectors are focused on tradition. Some are focused on innovation. Some are focused on finishing, and and all these things. And where the weightage of these focuses are will reveal itself, for example, during these articles. And that's the reason why we write these articles.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think you guys are one of the only independent sort of media in terms of watch, especially it's surrounding collectors, like not really like sort of commercial, anything commercial, in my opinion. That's what I have observed so far. But before we talk about deploying, I think I want to circle back some of the things that you mentioned about. So you mentioned about timezone.com, and now everyone knows that there's prominent character from timezone.com back in the day was William Messina. I mean,
Yes.
are you a good friend with him?
Yes, I know him for 20 plus years. Well, his real name is William Raw. Messina is his mother's surname. That's why he took the name. He's a prolific collector. I've known him for probably 30 years, close to 30 years. But he was already a very, very seasoned collector in those days. And he was very young. He started collecting when he was like 15, 16 years old, watches. He also collects lighters. And that's the thing which a lot of people don't even know today. But he collects lighters as well. He has a huge collection of lighters and watches. So I know him for very long. And he actually is in the real estate business.
Okay.
He's Austrian, but he grew up in Switzerland. He has a French passport, and now he has a US passport as well. So but now he doesn't live in the US anymore because he married a Scottish woman and he lives in Scotland.
Oh, so he actually speaks French too?
He speaks French, yeah. His native language.
Wow. So
His French is well, I wouldn't say
Austrian.
yeah,
Austrian
I would
and
say
French.
it's actually better than his English, but his English is very, very good. Yeah.
Right.
Even
Okay.
in the early days, we can easily understand him because he was based in New York. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense because he does a lot of collaboration with his
Yes,
Messina
yes. So
brand
this
and
brand,
other.
William,
Yeah.
Messina Lab, started maybe 6, 7 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Yeah, about right. Mm-hmm.
And originally it was kind of a surprise for us because he was one of us actually, collector, very passionate, interested in chasing all this funny independence in those days because independents were not fashionable in the early days.
Yeah.
And he also has got a very, very good knowledge of a lot of the watchmaking techniques and the watchmaking people, a lot of knowledge about vintage Rolexes, vintage Pateks. He
Mm-hmm.
attends auctions frequently, and also being a French speaker, he has access to a lot of the world of watchmaking, which is mainly French speaking actually. There's some Germans, but mostly French speaking. In
Yeah.
the Jura, it's mainly French speaking, and because of that, he has access to these people. He decided to start a brand, I think, a few years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, and the first products became quite successful because he won the GPHG awards a couple of times.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some of these collaborations are very, very interesting. In fact, in particular, if you one of the collaborations which has impressed me really the most is the collaboration with Raul Pages. So the Pages
Yeah.
Asina Lab is probably one of the least expensive ways you can enter the world of independent watchmaking for actually quite minimal cost, below 10,000 Swiss francs
Yeah,
for a watch
and
which is
his
beautiful, well
LVMH
designed.
award winner
Sorry.
Rahul Pajas, and yeah, and then with independent watchmakers such as Rahul Pajas, he's a LVMH. He's watch won LVMH award. I think last year or the year before last year. Yeah,
You mean Raul? Raul, yes, won
yeah,
the LVMH watch prize last year.
yeah.
But I also know Raul for many, many years because
Oh,
I at one time worked for Parmigiani as a photographer. I was based in Switzerland in Fleury, and I shared the workshop, the atelier with Raul. So
wow.
he was there as a restoration watchmaker, and he had his side. I mean, it was his workshop. I just gate crashed, and I had one table at the side. So I was with him every day. He was my lunch partner, and we went out almost every day. And he was working on very interesting projects at that time, because the restoration is a particular personal interest of Mr. Michel Parmigiani, and
Mm,
the restoration department is quite famous. So when I was there, the watches and clocks which were there for restoration came from the Patek Philippe Museum. We had a
uh-huh.
Breguet Sympathique, which is one of the original pieces. He showed me, for example, the restoration of the Rocha guns. You know, the little gun which were thousand over pieces. Where you press, the little bird comes out from the barrel of the
Uh,
gun,
I think so. I
comes
saw that.
up, sings, and then goes back in. And those things. Yeah, he was working on those things at that time, and he was also at that time preparing uh, his uh, his own independence, preparing to work on a project of the turtle.
Okay.
The turtle, which I think he never sold the turtle, partly because he was sentimental, and partly because he wanted a lot of money for the turtle. And then subsequently, he came up with his own watches. And I know him because I know and I like his work because I know and I've seen that he is a very, very serious person, uh, not prone to cutting corners, doing things exactly what is supposed to be done, trying to be as honest as possible in his restoration projects, and really a person I really respect and like a lot in the world of independent watchmaking.
That's high price from you. High praise from you. High praise.
Yes, yes, he's a person I really admire. Yeah, and I mean there are a few as well, others as well, but he's one of those. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I've seen his watches before. I have seen his watches
Mm,
before he won the award and everything. I think Tim from Taiwan is he's a pretty big independent collector, and he has influenced a few people. Um, Prior to the LVMH award, I think there's like
mm.
three or four of his watches I already have seen and in my hand, and those watches are just very meticulously well done.
Yes,
Like every finishing, every corner is like
yes.
like
And the
you mentioned.
the first watch that he actually made was not an in-house movement. He had a CMA movement, but the finishing is fantastic, really, really good. And then the second watch, RP2, is his own movement with the D10 escapement, which is an even more fabulous watch.
Agree, agree. Yeah, I mean, then circle back to, yeah, let's circle back to Basel World 35 years ago,
Mhm.
like when you guys were there. I mean, to me, I'm just as a watch collector from the side. I'm curious, like I understand. I thought that only it was only because social media and watch collectors actually go to Basel World, because to me that's a B2B environment, so business to
It
business
is.
environment. So why would like B2C? Why would I read? Why would any client want to go there on the out of their own pocket? Even to this day, like to me, it's weird because like people say, "Hey, have you been to Watch and Wonders?" Like, why would I do that? Why would I do that? But oh, nowadays I do see a lot of sort of like influencers and media personnels and YouTubers that go there to create content. But like just a client, can you help us like sort of draw a picture? Like, what does it feel like when like a collector
Yeah,
just go
sure,
there? Yeah.
sure. The way we started was actually through timezone.com because we made friends on the internet. We never met each other. I mean, internet is such a wonderful mechanism for this kind of thing, right? You never met the guy, but you know
Uh,
a lot about him because we talk a lot on the web and things like that. This was before the days of social media, so we were either emailing or we had chat groups, so we were chatting. And it's quite strange because we all jump into a chat group and we were from all over the world, and we would chat for maybe an hour or so, almost every other day. So for us, it's always very late night at 11 p.m. It was early, it was somehow manageable by the Americans because it was working hours for them, early in the morning, and for the Europeans, it was okay, probably after work. And we so we decided that we need to meet, and Basel was one of the places to meet. And some of these people had already been going even before I started. So people like William Messina, for example, has already been attending Basel World I for a long, long time. Yeah. Anyway,
okay.
his mother lives in Geneva, so probably when he visits them, he goes and meet
Uh,
up, goes to the show because the show is open to public. Basel World had 3 days. Basel was more interesting than now because today we don't even have media days. In those days, Basel World started with the first day, which is a press day. No professionals are allowed except for media. So we do a
mm,
lot of interviews and stuff like during the day. And then after it's open to trade, which are primarily, like you say, is B2B. So a lot of the retailers, distributors will go and make their annual buying spree there. And then the
mm,
last 2 days were public days. And the Swiss public actually did go. And most of the time by the last 2 days we will leave because the place became just crazy constant complicated, too many people. And the Swiss were quite interesting, even though they had to pay 50, I think in those days was 50 francs per head. They will bring their kids, they will bring their dogs into the show. And for us, we left by that time.
I
Yeah. And
see.
then at one time, there was also an overlapping show between Basel World and SIHH. So during the time, most of us would travel to Geneva to attend SIHH. SIHH was a little bit more exclusive because you don't get public in those days. Public cannot attend. You have to attend only by invitation. But by the time most of us have established enough credentials that we were getting invited by the brands to join them in the presentations and in the evening dinners, cocktails, and stuff like that. Yeah, but very really, Joe, you should go. It's quite fun. Uh, and the idea is not only in seeing the new watches as they are being released. That's one piece as a watch crazy guy. But the second idea, which I think is even more important, is the relationship that you build with the people who go there every year. And then you meet good friends, you meet people. I have friends who are lifelong. I made since the first time I went to Basel World, and they're still friends today. Uh, we still have lots of things to talk about, and they're always watches to talk about. Yeah. And today,
Great.
if you look, for example, at last year, our publication on what watch you're wearing in Watches and Wonders, Stanley and I were going around talking to a lot of people. Many of these guys were not even around in those days. They were kids when
Mm,
I was starting to the journey with some of these older guys. And some of these guys are actually very old guys.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have been around for a long time. And some
Sounds
of the
very
other
excited.
guys would not have started at that time either. So one of the guys, for example, which we interviewed, Jeff Kingston, who now works with Blancpain and Breguet. He was there in the introduction of the double sonnery for Blancpain. Well, he's much older than me, but he has not started collecting at the time. 35 years ago, he wasn't a collector. Yeah. People
Wow.
like Gary Getz, for example, wasn't collecting until maybe 10 years ago. They were not in the scene. The guys who were there were people like me, Michael Friedberg, William Messina, James Dowling, Michael Hickox, Michael Dunn, who has passed away, Hans Binden, who has passed away, Eugenio Demini, who kind of disappeared. It's a Dutch guy. And these guys, yeah. Most of us are kind of still around in the periphery if we're not dead. But some of us, unfortunately, have passed.
Yeah, I mean, well, that sounds like very exciting. Maybe I should go one day. We're looking forward
You
to
should.
that.
Let
Yeah,
us know,
yeah.
and then we'll help you in one or two of the meetings. We probably it's probably difficult for you to follow us all the days because our calendar is really crazy. But a couple of hours or so like that, I don't think it's a problem. We can come and see, especially some of the brands who are more open to channels. So some brands like Rolex, Patek, they're very particular. They register 3 people means 3 people, 2 people means 2 people, and sometimes only 1. So that's why for Patek, some of the shows, the showings, either Stanley goes or I go. We have to split because no choice. They only have space for 1.
Yeah.
Which is not because they are being rude or they are being arrogant, but because they really don't have space. The room is that big and it's that big, and there are so many journalists. So it's one person per media title.
Yeah.
And it's quite common, many brands. But some brands are more relaxed.
Yeah.
So some brands are okay. You add 1, 2 people, it's not a problem.
Cool.
Especially the independents. So the independents are quite interesting. I also started with independents very early, and that's why I have a personal passion for independents. I was there in the early days of the AHCI, the formation of AHCI, and the start of the birth of many to become independent brands by themselves. So people like François Paul-Jean, Philippe Dufour, Vincent Calabresi, who else? Robert Grobel, Stephen Fosse. I've known them for many years. And in a way, that makes things a little bit easier because I still have direct touch and contact with these people. And there are a lot of stories. We probably cannot finish in one podcast, so maybe we should schedule a few.
Yeah, we should. Yeah. I mean, I love to just listen to you
A
say
bit more
talk about it.
all the other items or the other interesting things that has happened in the previously.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I from from my understanding is that everybody who goes there is really tired after a few days of Basel World or Geneva Watch Days. Yeah, Watching Wonders. So yeah, well, let's shift gear a little bit in terms of like characters in Watch World. I mean, we can't really say much else. Had Gunther Brundtland still alive today, or we would still celebrate him as a sort of like hero of watchmaking. As you mentioned, like yeah, they were being already being honest about their sort of like fresh releases of their a few models that was using JLC movement. But it's as expected, right? Like you said, like if FHH was owned by Gunther Brundtland's business,
Yeah.
so I mean JLC
they
was owned
started
by
brand new
them.
from nothing.
Yeah, and
And
also IWC, they did they revived IWC and revived Langa. So it's like yeah, of course, the Gundam Bunla will use the JLC movement. Of course, that will happen. So yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
they started in the background in Glashütte, really in those days where it was just after the GDR, the East German communist regime, where they had nothing. There were no computers. All their computers were very backward. Equipment was very backward, and they had to get up to speed with modern equipment. Of course, these technology and teachings were imported from IWC, from Jigar LeCoultre, because this is where Mr. Blumlein was the boss.
yeah.
And also the project, which was also documented in my book, the Polymerite series, which were 2 watches at that time, the Tourbillon Polymerite and the Turbograph Polymerite, were also started during that time. And these were not projects which developed in Glashütte. They were actually developed by Renault Papi. And the watches were actually
Oh,
being assembled in Switzerland. So Dominique Renault, for example, used to joke that he assembled the Tourbillon Polymerite in his kitchen in the south of France. Which is true, but this was not initially communicated to the public. unless you ask, and people didn't know how to ask in those days. Yeah.
Mm.
So it was not communicated at all until quite recently. So when I wrote the book, I think it was a surprise to many people that these pieces were actually made by Renault Papi. The interesting thing is that the last project manager for Renault Papi to deliver the turbograph polymerate was Anthony De Haas, who after the
Mm.
project closed with Renault Papi, Langen as the head of product development, and he's still there today.
Yeah, and then he's head of lead of Zywork products for
Yeah.
Langa.
So all of these are yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the Langen history, is quite impressive because they actually built the company out of nothing,
Yep.
out of
Yep.
investment. I think initially it was 100,000 Deutschmark, and then it was increased to I think 10 million for the factory. The most important character in this series is Mr. Blumlein.
Yeah.
Although Walter Lange played a part in the heritage story, but he was not a major mover, I would say. He was a major player, but he was not a major mover in the re-establishment of Langen. And the reason why the company is called Lange Uhren is because they were not sure whether they could register the brand name Langen in 1989 no, 1993, 1889, correct. 1990, the wall came down when they re-registered the
Mm-hmm.
company. And the
Right.
interesting thing is that Lange was also not in Mr. Blumlein's radar during that time because he was already head of IWC and Jigar LeCoultre.
Yep.
It was his boss in the company in which LMH belonged to, which was VDO.
Right.
I don't know if you're a car guy,
Yes.
you know VDO. They make a lot of instruments.
Yes, I
And
know.
he was a watchmaker trained in Glasuda. And he told Blumlein that, look, the
Oh.
wall is coming down next year or whatever. Go and have a look at this brand and try and see whether we can buy the brand. We can revive the brand,
Yeah,
which is
that's
what he did. So Blumlein went in and found the sole survivor of the family at that time, which was Walter Lange, who had retired by that time
yeah.
in Fort Zine. And well, the rest, as they say, is history. And all this is actually documented in the book. I have pictures of the location where they met and things like that as well.
Oh, I
First met.
was trying to dig this out. Okay, that makes so much sense because yeah, the German unification, East German and West German unification
Yeah,
caused that Gasuda had become sort of like a deathbed for like watchmaking
yeah.
because of
Well, Glasuda has always been in the past have always been a great place for making watches, especially after the glass making industry there collapsed. Glasuda means glass hut, so it used to make glass,
mm,
but the industry was not doing well, and it became very, very poor. And it was the work of Ferdinand Adolf Lange, who then decided to bring watchmaking and the watchmaking school to Glashütte, which started this tradition of fine watchmaking in the valley. It's a
yeah,
valley about 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers, it's 40, something like that, away from Dresden, which is where
Opera House.
the Elector of Saxony had his palace. And
Mm,
Ferdinand Adolf Lange was the court watchmaker. Or his father-in-law, his wife's father, was the chief watchmaker, Frederick Goodcase.
yeah, that's very interesting. But I mean, but after like, I'm curious about the World War I, World War II because I do remember like sort of like I was asking people like, hey, do you remember any Langa if was Langa making any wristwatch before World War I? Because I understand there's period
World War
between.
One, I think there were some pieces, but World War One, I think the involvement was not so big. There were some marine watches made for
No, no, no,
U-boat to that,
no, no. I'm
but they
saying
were involved in World War Two. So
I'm
they made because they were also even at that time very high end. So they made some flight watches, Flieger watches, which are very big, and those were used in World War Two. They also made a couple of very high end pocket watches, deck watches for admirals, and they actually had one made for Hitler.
oh
But they were not part of the Nazi infrastructure in that
right.
sense because none of them were party members. The family only were very commercial, and after the fall of the Berlin Wall, They were going to of course the communists, the Soviets seized all the properties, and Walter Lange and his brother escaped into the West. They ran away and escaped into the West. He was Walter Lange himself was a member of the German army during the Second World War, but he was injured very early I think it was in Finland or in somewhere in the north, and he was withdrawn from service. So he did not serve actively for very long, but he was part of the military. I think in World War I or World War II, I don't remember exactly. There is a book, his memoirs, which talk about this.
Yeah. I think he got crippled. Either he's blind or something. Like his legs not working or something. That after that's why it was out of service.
Yeah, if we want to talk about this, we should go and I could go and read up a little bit more to
No
refresh
worries,
my
no
memory
worries.
because I forgot.
I just wanna touch on a point where like before World War One, Lange was making pocket watches, and then
Yes,
I think during the war they become unionized because of their communist parties, and so let's
yes,
just not talk about World War One, World War Two, but when the World War when they revived the brand, actually like nowadays you see a longer watch, it's a longer watch. Whether that's a case, that's a design, whether that's a big numeral on a dial, you just know that's a
yes,
longer, and that's very strong DNA. Whether that's
yes,
Tourbillon or Zywork, you just know that's still a
yes.
longer, right? I mean, whether that's inspiration from Dresden Opera House or Gasutet
Well,
area.
this was based on the four principles which were established by Gunther Blumlein when they re-established Angela. So there were four principles, and they continue to follow it today. So one of them is this Teutonic feel. The watch must feel German, and the analogy which he used, and this is an analogy he used and not invented by us, is that is the slamming of the door of a Mercedes Benz. So you close the door of a Mercedes car in the early days where it's very heavy.
Boom.
The way in which it closes and the sound you get when the door closes is exact kind of feel you want. He wanted the Lange watches would possess. It's solid, it feels of quality, it feels heavy, and that's the feel he wants. So the tagline in those days was that the Swiss makes fantastic watches, but so do the Germans. So his idea was not to compete with the Swiss because anyway he ran two Swiss companies, IWC and Jaeger-LeCoultre. Jaeger-LeCoultre being more Swiss because being more French, and IWC being more German. But he had two Swiss companies as well. And so his idea was that we are not here to replace the Swiss. We're here to provide an alternative. The Germans also make good watches. And that's the idea.
Yeah, and back in the day, a lot of taglines from the IWC is probably not legal for now to talk about.
Well, he also started the big advertising campaign for IWC, where some of it were, if you view today, in today's eyes, will be viewed as sexist. For example, he says that an IWC watch is unlike any woman you've met because it is never late.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
I think he's a brilliant. I mean, when I first heard about him, actually, it was from Max Boozer. Yeah, he mentioned about like creative process is not a democratic process. The creative is a democratic process. I was like, yeah, I heard it somewhere. Oh, it was Max who told me that in person. Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yes. We're doing a series of interviews on to remember Mr. Blumlein by, because the 1st of October 2026 is 25 years anniversary of his death, and I'm doing a series of videos which we started. The first one we recorded actually was, as you interestingly mentioned, it was Max Busser. So I was with Max at the Madhouse earlier this year to record that episode, and we were also going to add the other people who were influenced by him, touched by his life and his work. So it's a pity that he died very young, 58 years old. And I saw him actually just 2 months before he passed away. We were in Basel, and I had dinner with him, and he said, "I'm feeling a bit tired, maybe because I'm getting old, and the stress of the show and blah blah blah." And 2 months later, he was in hospital, and I think maybe 3 months or 4 months later, he died. And Lange was nice enough to fly me to his funeral, so I was there. I was in Schaffhausen for the well, not the real funeral because that was a closed door. but at the public memorial. And interestingly, at that time, all the competitors were there. Mr. Hayek Senior was there.
Yeah.
And the younger guys like Bive and these people were there as well. Were present at his funeral and gave nice eulogies about this great man.
Yeah,
I think we are almost.
Well, yeah. It's sad to see Gunter Bulan pass away so early. I mean, age 58, and you actually at height of all those brands, JLC.
Yes.
Yes, and also the fact that he's curious about your publication via internet. And I think he didn't
Yes.
know. I think he probably didn't even use computer at the time. He probably just I don't even know like.
Yeah.
At the time, 1998, 1997, probably not everybody have internet, not everybody have a computer at home.
Yep.
So
So I didn't know how he knew about me, but somehow he did.
yeah, I mean that's pretty incredible. You mentioned about Fortune City. I hate to mention about this, but I should create my first website on GeoCities. But that's on the US side. That's I think that was later bought by Yahoo. But yeah, I should create my site back in the day. But I never heard about Fortune City. But yeah, so it's really interesting like how he has a vision on like how like maybe perhaps the future of what media gonna go on the internet. So I really would have been cool to see what would be his presence nowadays if he's still alive today on social media, how people portray about him.
And so did Mr. Rupert, because one of the principal reasons why Richmond paid so much money for LMH is because of him.
Yeah, that is no doubt about it. But also, Richmond makes a lot more money now, having cash cow.
It will be completely different. Yeah. I'm sure it will be completely different.
Yeah, well, agree. And without him, I don't think they will be longer today. I mean, longer the way they are today. I mean, that distinctive DNA that he has. So let's circle back on deployment. So you mentioned about deployment being having writers. So can you share a little bit about how, I mean, the process of like who are the writers are like generally in terms of...
Sure. I currently have a number of writers, and most of them has been with me almost from day one. So most of the writers are young. The oldest of them, I think, is 36 years old, and that's Frank Cho. Dr. Frank Cho is a pharmacologist. He lives in Malaysia. He's quite a prolific collector, and he started when he was in the university, and that's where we met when he was doing his PhD in Australia. So he writes many of the technical reviews, in-depth technical reviews. We are also one of the few publications who still do in-depth technical reviews, sometimes up to 2,000 words long, with 6 to 8 high-resolution photographs, detailing everything about the watch, from history to finishing to techniques to comparisons. In fact, that's the other thing that I think we do that nobody else does, because in every review we have a section called competitive landscape, where we compare the watch to other watches which are either similar in feature, similar in price, similar in function, or similar in vibe to that particular watch that we are reviewing. So that's Dr. Frank Buller is in Malaysia. I have 2 guys in Singapore. There's Stanley, it's one of them. I have another chap called Robin. So there's Robin, Stanley in Singapore. I have another person in Singapore, but she's not full-time. Actually, none of them are full-time. She's contributing once in a while. She's an engineer by trade, so she's kind of like my engineering consultant. So she writes very technical articles about engineering stuff. Her name is Sharon. Then I have one other Singaporean, but he lives in Seattle. His name is Chester. He writes, because he works for a very large American multinational with a lot of traveling, he writes mainly today on news articles. All of these guys have got different preferences and biases, and normally would assign reviews to these guys based on what they like. For example, Robin likes those entry-level independents, less expensive watches. Frank likes the very complicated, very high value watches with avoidance of certain brands. And then Stanley kind of like is a bit more rounded. And Stanley has become a very important player in the team, because he's a lot more enthusiastic. He he really has a good vision, and he's actually pushing me to do a lot of things which we wouldn't have done. For example, starting up a YouTube channel, and pushing heavily onto events and things like that. So it's been a good run together with this team. I have another chap in Holland, but he's an older guy. I've known him for very many years. He's retired. He writes once in a while when he feels like it. So he has contributed some articles on photography, on some of the very small independent European brands that he likes. So most of these, all of these guys are all part-time. So I'm the only one who, I'm not full-time anyway in a sense, but because I don't work on this 9 to 5 every day, I spend maybe 3 hours, 2.5 hours, 3 hours a day on deploying, excluding events and attending meetings and things like that. If you add that, maybe a bit more. So I'm the only one kind of like in full-time doing this. Of course, when we are in Watches and Wonders, both Stanley and me are 100% full-time, 24/7. So it's 24 hours by 5 days. So it's easily 60 hours with maybe 5 hours of sleep every night. And the rest of the time we are actually on deploying business, either entertaining, talking to people, being entertained, getting drunk, or looking at, of course, all the time talking about watches. And I'm one of those people that, many people after going to a big show like this, after a week of looking at watches, talking about watches, photographing watches, say, oh, I'm sick of watches. By the end, I am not sick of watches. At the end of the 5-day period, I'm still willing and eager to talk about watches and about everything else as well. Yeah. So you should come and join us. Stanley usually rents a car, and we have crazy conversations in the car. We talk about all kinds of funny things.
Especially
in the car.
when he's drunk.
I mean, we share some things which we in common. We like drinking wine, champagne. We like he likes cars. I'm not into cars, but of course we like watches. I'm into very heavily into photography. He's trying to get in. Yeah, it's quite interesting. And what usually after Watches and Wonders, actually, Dr. Muller, whom I met as an introduction to Mr. Bloomline, comes with us. He comes for the last few days, and we sometimes spend a couple of days in Burgundy together. It's quite nice. Yeah. Are you into wines?
Not really. I'm not really.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, great. I mean, I think we should do a part 2. So let's do that, and we leave a lot of my questions out for later, because I would just love to hear to talk, and I think it will give our audience a good sort of like view from your perspective in terms of how Gunther Brunlein, or how the earlier days of internet is like, watch internet is like.
Sure. So, no problem with that. Yeah.
Yeah, so Peter, how would people if people want to find you, how would they be able to reach out to you?
They can reach out to me at either on social media as Peter Deploying at Instagram, so direct messaging works, or at p@deploying.com, which is my email, or message to the website works as well, because it will eventually come to me. Cool. But there we use a Gmail account because it's open, and I don't want everybody to write to me directly. So it's a Gmail account. It's deployingeditorialteam@gmail.com. I'll send you this so that you can include it somewhere.
I'll leave that in the show now. Thank you so much, Peter,
Thank you very much
today.